Hi, I'm Laura Nelkin. Welcome to the companion video for clue number 2 of Open Minds Mystery Knit Along. I hope that you had a great time with clue 1, and I'm really excited to jump into clue 2 with you. First, I think I should just be honest and tell you that I filmed clue 1 and clue 2 together, same shirt. Goldie and I decided to trade our scarves. What do you guys think? I think she wears that one really well. I'm a little jealous of how Goldie looks at everything. Anyway, there's your little aside that I love to do. I'm going to tell you about clue number 2. I loved knitting clue number 2 and clue number 3, and I got very excited to get these on my needles because I'm working little mystery shawls with you guys, and it's like revisiting old friends. For clue number 2, you are going to be working with MC, MS, and LY, but you will not be working with your beads until clue number 4. So the first thing that I need to do is tell you how to prepare your yarn for working clue number 2. Okay, time to prepare your yarn for clue number 2. In a nutshell, what you are doing is using half of your MS in clue number 2 and half of it in clue number 3, and the same with the rest of your MC. So you're going to take your MC and you're going to weigh what you have left, and then you are going to divide that in half. Keep in mind that I started with a skein that had about 435 yards on it for the MC. You'll just weigh your yarn that you have and then wind it off so that that original ball weighs half of what it started weighing. Good for that on the MC. Now for the MS, if you have a full skein of yarn you're using for the MS, remember that I used about a 435 yard skein. So if yours is bigger, you're gonna wanna have 435-ish yards. There's a zhuzh factor in there. And then you're gonna take that full skein and weigh it and write down that weight, and then start to make a second ball with that skein so that both balls weigh the same. This is why you had to have that digital scale for cutting these balls of yarn in half. If you are working with a gradient pack, or you've kind of gone stash diving and found 5 different yarns to work with together, your total yardage, what is it? Around 435 yards. You're going to first take your 5 skeins and wind them into balls, and then cut those balls in half, just like you did with your main color or if you were using a full skein. Exact same technique. And then you're going to take your 5 colors and lay them out so that you can name them 1 through 5. Color number 1 should be the color that contrasts with your MC the best. And then color number 5 should contrast with your LY the best. The way I did mine, my lightest color was color number 1 and my darkest color was color number 5. But I saw that some of you went the opposite way based on the color of your LY and your MC. And if anybody else heard me talking about this, they'd be like, what is she talking about? But anyway, I digress. Line your yarns out, label them 1 to 5. You might be able to just do it in your mind. You can write on little pieces of paper if you need to keep track of them. And then you're going to take those 5 mini skeins that you've already cut in half and make a magic ball out of them, right? So you're taking half of your yarn and making a magic ball for clue number 2, and then the other half and making a magic ball for clue number 3. Magic balls, you can either just wind one yarn, like wind color number 5, wind color number 4, wind color number 3, etc. or you can wind them with a magic knot. And I would love to show you how to work a magic knot. I've used magic knots in many different designs over the years. They work incredibly well. The trick with the magic knot is to test it and test it twice to make sure that you trust it. If you're not feeling confident about magic knots, you don't need to work one. You can just weave in your ends, and that's absolutely fine. It's your choice and your yarn. So you do need to do this with strong yarns. If you have a yarn that breaks really easily when you pull on it, I'm not gonna suggest it for a magic knot. So I'm all set up. Let me show you how to do a magic knot. Okay, here's a magic knot. Ready? The first thing I've done is taken my 2 yarns that I'll be magic knotting together, and I've got like the ball of yarn over on each end and then just the tails pointing towards each other. And now I'm gonna take the top yarn and go underneath this dark yarn, and then I'm gonna come over it again, making a loop, and then I'm gonna take the end and go inside that hole, just like that, and I'm gonna pull that up. Quite tightly, I would say. And now I'm going to take the dark yarn and go underneath, and then I'm going to go over, and then I'm going to bring the end through this loop right here. And I am going to pull that tight. So I've got 2 knots that are tight, and now I can take the working yarn from each end and pull those together, making a beautiful knot. And now the last thing to do is to go in with your scissors and cut really close to that edge. So I'm cutting right up close to the knot, kind of as close as you can get without cutting the yarn. And your last step is to yank on that and make sure it's not going anywhere. You can see I'm really pulling on it with all my strength, and it is a completely good knot. So you can do that to connect your 5 skeins together if you want, or you can have some ends to weave in. That is totally up to you. So once you've got your MC prepped and your MS prepped, your LY is gonna come into the end of Clue 2. Go ahead and start reading the pattern. You're going to see the next thing that you're going to be doing is a provisional cast on, and let's look at that together. Okay, you already know how to work a provisional cast on from the beginning of Clue 1. If you want a refresher, remember you can go back to that or watch my separate provisional cast on video. I'm all set up on my needles with less stitches than you have on your needles, but I want to show you what this setup looks like for Clue 2. So down on my needles, I've got the wrong side facing of Clue number 1 in my right hand, and I've got my provisional stitches in my left hand. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to knit across all of those stitches. So I'm just attaching myself right there. The big trick for those first few stitches is just kind of pull up a little bit tight so you don't end up with a loose bit right there. And you're just going to knit across. So after you've knitted across and you make it to the end and you turn to work a right side row, if you want, and I highly suggest this, go ahead and place a lifeline in those stitches that you just worked across. What that lifeline is going to do is make it so when you go to rip out your provisional cast on to work these stitches later on in a future clue, That Lifeline will catch all of your live stitches and make it so it is not a scary moment to unzip that provisional cast on. If you haven't done that before, I also cover that in that provisionally cast on video. So Lifeline, I like to use a strong, smooth buttonhole thread. You'll just use a tapestry needle, something with a little blunt tip on the end, and place that Lifeline all the way through your stitches. Completely optional, but a great thing to do at that point, and I find it really helps people later on. So now you're gonna jump in with row 1, and I want to show you what happens at the middle of row 1. So I am going to knit up to the point where we're gonna work a center double decrease. The only other thing I want to tell you before I jump into that knitting bit is right now is a really good time to place a removable stitch marker on the right side of your work. And that is because you are going to be working garter stitch. And when you work garter stitch, it can be hard to tell what the right side is and what the wrong side is. So that removable stitch marker will just kind of remind you what side of your knitting you're on. And I'll just move that removable stitch marker up as I'm working clue 2. I lost my words. I'm having a hard time talking in this one. So I'm just knitting across till I get to the point where I'm working the center double decrease. Okay, now I'm at the point where I'm gonna work the center double decrease. If you haven't worked one of these before, I just want to show you how that is done. I am going to slip the first 2 stitches purlwise with the yarn and back, and now I'm going to knit 1, and I am going to pass those 2 slip stitches over. This becomes the center point of clue 2, and every time you work a center double decrease going forward on this clue, you will be making this stitch right here the center point. So you'll be decreasing these 3 stitches together. I have a feeling as you get into working clue 2 that it's going to become very natural for you at what point you are working that center double decrease. Have a really good time with this clue. It is such a fun one. So you're just going to knit to the end, and there's not really anything else that I need to show you in clue number 2. I will tell you 2 things about clue number 2. One thing is at the very end of clue number 2, there is a purled center double decrease. I have a separate video for that, and it's written out in the abbreviations if you haven't worked that before. The other thing is at some point towards the end of clue number 2, you are going to run out of MC and switch over to working with LY instead of MC. This is probably going to happen in the last third-ish of your mitered square. I liked to end a row with the MC and start a row with the LY. That's your choice if you want to switch in the middle of a row, but I suggest doing that on an end, and it'll be pretty obvious to you as you're running out of the MC if you have enough to do an extra row or not with it. Don't worry too much about where you're switching to the LY. I've padded in extra LY knowing that some of your MC skeins might be a little light and that you would need more LY for clue 2. So I really think that you're good to go. Again, ask questions if you have any, post photos. I can't wait to hear what you guys think of what we're making. This is like no thong I've ever seen before. Clue 2 is a really nice break for those of you that chose to do the active minds. So just lean into this clue 2, have a great time, sit outside and knit, post photos for us, ask questions. We are here for you. I can't wait to see your open minds. Thank you.